So hello all and welcome. I am the Bachelor Philosopher, also known as the Realist Philosopher, because before any and everything else, I am a realist. So how y'all doing today? I hope you're all doing good, fine, and well. So in this video, I wanted to talk about the seeming mysterious disappearance of the word and ideology of feminism being discussed. Now, I would usually try to avoid using that word in its original form, feminism, because YouTube doesn't like when that's used, and videos that use that tend to be, shadow banned and demonetized. But I'm not monetized, and I'm probably de facto shadow banned anyway, so why not? But isn't that interesting that that word, feminism, has become so taboo of late, whether you be on the right or the left, and it's not being used and discussed anymore. And in fact, I went and I just typed in the word feminism on YouTube, and the most recent video I got was 9 months old. And every video before that was a year, and there weren't very many. Then 2, and then within just a few videos, it's jumping to 6, 7 years. The subject of feminism, videos entitled feminism, videos primarily about feminism, are either not being made anymore, or YouTube is primarily shadow banning them and making sure that they don't come up in search results. Why is that? Why is it that when I see media, the word is not being used anymore? Why is it that so many content creators just aren't talking about it anymore? Well, because the mainstream isn't pushing it anymore. The mainstream isn't focusing on it anymore. The mainstream isn't using that word anymore. Why is that? Why is it that the word feminism seems to have become taboo of late? Well, I'll tell you why. Because pushback. Lots of pushback. Growing pushback and discussion of the clear and obvious inconsistencies and contradictions within the ideology itself, an ideology that claims to be so much about equality, but is ever more obviously about nothing more than essentially getting equality when it benefits women, but not having any real responsibilities in terms of getting the privileges that women said they've been denied for so long, which somehow equals oppression. Women only want equality when it benefits them. They don't want equality when there's some kind of negative consequence or possible consequence attached. And these talking points were becoming more and more focused on, and so it was just becoming too much of a hot potato. And the focus and the attention on these inconsistencies and contradictions was becoming such that if it continued to get attention, it would just throw the entire oppression Olympics into a disarray, and it would put the left's goal, the powers that be goals, at risk. So what they do? They said, okay, we're going to shift the branding. No more feminism. We're going to use intersectionality and systematic oppression, and we're going to switch it primarily to the umbrella terminology of intersectionality, which not only incorporates women, but also trans and gay and all these, and black people and Hispanics and all these so-called oppressed groups. We're going to take the sexual cultural Marxism, the race cultural Marxism, the class cultural Marxism, and the sexual identity cultural Marxism. We're going to throw them all together. We're going to stop focusing on just the woman, because that's getting old, that's getting played, and it's getting too obvious that it's bogus, it's BS. And that's what they did. But I wanted to keep the discussion on that singular subject without muddying the waters with race and gender and sexual orientation and sexual identification and all this relativistic nonsense. I want to take the conversation back to this very specific subject, because when you get right down to it, there is really no difference between gender cultural Marxism and race cultural Marxism and self-identifications, cultural Marxism and hierarchical class cultural Marxism. They're all cultural Marxism. Now, the one that they primarily use to beat men into submission and make them not care so much and make them more apathetic and make them less likely to pursue a life of meaning and purpose that will then invest them into their culture and then lead them to actually fight for their traditions and traditional beliefs, is feminism. That's been the main tool. So I want to bring the discussion back to that, because in focusing on that main tool of cultural social deconstructivism that has been the primary weapon of the left and the powers that be for so long, I want to use that to cast light on all of the fake, faux, critical theorist movements, cultural Marxist movements that are all encompassed, all under the umbrella of intersectionality. So let's jump right into it by reviewing one of the most recent videos, one of the last videos that was posted on YouTube 9 months ago, asking what feminism is. Anyhow, let's get into this video, which is relatively recent, where they're trying to indoctrinate more new members.
How many of you would call yourselves feminists?
By the way, this is from Australia. So one of the top 5 feminist countries in the world, just so you know. And we've got a multicolored Kool-Aid haired girl here. So of course she's a feminist.
Would I call myself a feminist?
And notice also, if you've noticed, women don't use that term anymore. They are still feminists, but they understand the negative messaging and connotations that go along with that moniker, with that label. So they're trying to chameleon themselves at a hide from criticism, because feminism, like I said, has gotten too much pushback. It's gotten too much negative press. It's been out there so long. It's their main weapon, their main tool. So it's getting a lot of criticism, and rightly so.
If feminism means to advocate for equal rights between both genders, then yes, I would consider myself a feminist.
That's not what feminism is, though. It's never been about that, because originally the original suffragettes, and by the way, that was like 5% of women, 95% of women didn't want to vote because they knew that getting the vote would come with equal responsibilities. This privilege of voting also has a responsibility that goes along with it, i.e. that responsibility being the draft, which, by the way, they never, ever have had to sign for. So women want the benefits without the accompanying responsibilities. That's not equality. And as for equal rights, rights are made up. They don't exist, and men and women are different. All equality means is the same. It's a synonym for same. So if men and women are not the same, why would they get the same rights unless they are performing the same duties and have the same responsibilities in the public sphere? They don't, so they shouldn't. So feminism is in and of itself a non-starter, and just something that was ginned up and created to divide along gender lines.
By that definition that I gave, I would be a feminist, yes.
Dude, you're a simp, you're a cuck boy, hello, you're a man. Do you see women calling themselves masculinists? They could just as easily call themselves masculinists, right? But they call themselves feminists. Why? Because they're pushing the faux, the fake, the false narrative that women have somehow been oppressed. And since it's not men that have been oppressed, only women that have been oppressed, it should be called feminism. Meanwhile, why don't you just call it something neutral? right? If you're really all about treating people the same, and stop calling it feminism, referring to one gender over another. That in and of itself is not equal. That is not same treatment. Call it equalism. But they don't do that, right? Of course not, because that's not what it's about.
I like to go out, feel safe the same way men do.
You are a dummy. You are, where you get, this is just a more BS feminist talking points. Hey, sweetheart, men are 4.5 to 5 times more likely to be the victims of violent assault than men. You are much, much safer because men are biologically hardwired to want to protect you. If I'm walking down the street and somebody bonks me on the head, ain't nobody going to rush to defend me in most cases, unless it's like a cop within, earshot or, within, a visual of what's happening. Meanwhile, you're a woman, somebody attacks you, a whole bunch of men are likely going to white knight and Captain Save-A-Ho you and protect you. So I don't know what you're talking about. You are not living in reality.
Not having to feel like I have to hold my keys between my knuckles.
Would you shout from the rooftops, "I am a feminist"?
No, because feminism is not about equality. It's about superiority. That is how it plays out. That is the end result. I don't care what you say. I look at what you do, and I look at the end result of a specific policy, or in this case, ideology.
Or is there something stopping you?
There are definitely some negative stereotypes.
When people say feminist, they hear that word and think, oh, women who just want to be better than men.
Feminism
Right, and I wonder where they got that idea, sweetheart.
is a political movement.
So this is a very unattractive woman. She's one of the useful idiot shill morons in academia. She's a gender studies professor lecturer, so she has no skills. She has no abilities that contribute anything in a positive way to the free market. She doesn't produce anything except bad ideas. By the way, she's one of these people that I am sure advocates for things like hate speech and censorship of ideas that are really just ideas she doesn't like. So I'm really not surprised that she identifies as a feminist. It's good for her. It's good for her pocketbook, and she's going to need a lot in her pocketbook because feminism is a particularly expensive ideology for women to follow. So she's like those original suffragettes. She's hideous. She's ugly. No man wants her. So, yeah. Misery loves company, right, honey?
Against sexism. There's a backlash to new movements of feminism.
There are no new movements of feminism. Let me clue you in on something. Feminism is feminism is feminism. I've been saying this for 7 years now. As long as I've been posting online, there was no difference between first wave and fourth wave. They're the same. It's just that as feminism has gained more power, the mask begins to slip. Because if you hold total, complete power, why would you even bother wearing a mask to hide your objectionable beliefs? You wouldn't. So, what first and fourth wave feminism, the differential is simply that the mask has slipped off. They've just become more comfortable in expressing their true beliefs over time. That's all.
Unfortunately, with the idea of men's rights groups that are not feminist groups that see contemporary.
Well, so that's evil. They're men's rights groups. That's evil? But I thought you believed in equality. So wouldn't you be for men's rights as well? You see, these people talk about equality, but they push the idea of getting to that equality through what they call positive discrimination. So discrimination is evil, discrimination is bad. We believe that women have been discriminated against for the majority of human history. So the answer to that is to discriminate against men to raise women up somehow. Wouldn't the answer to that be to treat both equally? No? Why not? Well, because the truth you're talking about is nothing more than a merit gap, an ability gap, based upon the jobs, the industries, the positions that you women want to get, but you know that you can't compete against men on an even equal playing field to get those positions, compete with them, take those positions from men, so you stack the deck with things like quotas and affirmative action. All right, and virtue signaling, talking about how it's somehow more noble and makes you a better, more morally superior, evolved person to focus on things like gender over merit. None of that sounds like equal treatment to me. But of course, if you actually had equal treatment, it would become very obvious that men and women are not the same. They're not interchangeable widgets like people like her push. It's not all a social construction, and stereotypes exist for a reason. Anyway, let's continue.
Feminism as taking something away from them.
But it is objectively that. Objectively, it is taking away from men. Positive discrimination is just discrimination.
When it's not. It's about
It is, and we don't care what you say, we look at what you do.
creating a more equal world for all.
But it's not a more equal world if you focus upon people's gender as a way to shoehorn them into positions for hiring, for policy, for all sorts of things, welfare, for custody, who gets alimony. If you're only focusing on gender instead of merit, deservedness, then how exactly is that about equality?
Inclusive.
There was the word inclusive, right? Yeah, inclusive. See, they're switching the focus away from the word feminism because it's got so many negative connotations and has gotten so much scrutiny of late.
These misunderstandings about feminism have been around for a long time.
They're not misunderstandings. And now you're just trying to stealth deliver your same old boring, tired message and hope that it doesn't get some kind of pushback now that you're not in people's faces as much with it as you used to be because you were getting so much pushback.
Pretty much from the start of the feminist movement in the late 19th century, when the campaign to allow women to vote hit Australia. Around the world, similar movements were led by an activist group called the suffragettes.
Right, they were about 5% of the female population, not even that, and they were heavily funded by the global elites, powers that be, so they could get women into the workforce, get kids into public schools, so that the state could raise those kids to be good, useful, tax-chattel idiots, and they could be in charge of these kids learning, and not the parents, and not the family, which is the bedrock foundation of Western culture. Got to get rid of that, right? It's too much of a challenge. It's too much competition for the power and control of the state. Got to get those women into jobs so they can pay taxes, right? Got to cut those wages in half, right? While at the same time, doubling the amount of taxpayers. That's all feminism is really about. Power, control, money, tax revenue.
At this point in history, women had a very small amount of independence, and that was all taken away from them as soon as they got married.
How? How did they lose their independence? Please tell us what you consider independence. What, liberation, total complete liberation, right? Freedom to do whatever you want, which, by the way, nobody's ever had, not men, not women.
After they tied the knot, women weren't allowed to keep working. They weren't allowed...
It's not true. That's not true. That's a lie. They could work if they wanted. They just didn't want to because they understood after hundreds of thousands of years of humanity and hard-won lessons that it's more fulfilling and meaningful to be a parent raising the next generation and submitting to their husband than submitting to some nameless, faceless corporate bureaucracy that doesn't care about you.
to own property or easily file for divorce or maintain custody of their children.
Why would they need to own property? Why would why? And yeah, they could own stuff. I don't know what she's talking about. Yeah, women could own property. Okay, that's total complete nonsense. What are you talking about?
Or have any financial independence.
They spent most of the money, as they do now. Women spend 85% of the money. Why do you think everybody panders so much to them? What are you talking about? They were in charge of the finances. The man went to work, she spent the money. Another lie.
In 1902, Australia became just the second nation in the world to allow women to vote and run for parliament. Thanks to this first wave of feminism, women could now elect women who could create laws for women.
Right, and that's all you care about. You're one big giant monolith, you're collectivist by nature, you don't have any skin in the game, you don't really pay taxes. Men still pay 85% of the taxes in pretty much every Western country on average. So, you know, you're in the red, you have no skin in the game. What do you care? And in ever greater numbers, you're not having kids. So you have no investment in the future. So you have apathy about the future. You don't care. You're all about the pleasure of the moment. And that kind of mindset and lack of investment leads to poor decision making in the realm of voting.
Fast forward a few decades and a couple of world wars, and we get to the roar of women's liberation in the 1960s and 1970s.
So that word implies they were somehow enslaved and they needed to be liberated. That's not true. What did they need to be liberated from? Can you tell me? This is the problem with feminism. It teaches that marriage and the prior paradigm was somehow hemming women in, enslaving them, making them prisoners. That's a total complete lie. That's a false framing.
Known as the second wave. In the early 60s, a little thing called the contraceptive pill came on the market in Australia, which meant women no longer had to choose between a career and having a relationship or a family. So, they went to work. There was
Yeah, but you do have to choose between both if you want to do either of them well. You can't be a good parent and a career woman. Sorry, there's got to be somebody there with that kid 24/7. And if you're hiring a nanny, you're not a good parent. If you're going to work, you're putting that kid in daycare, you're not a good parent. Which is fine. That's fine with the state. They don't want you to be a good parent. They want you to abdicate that responsibility and give it to the state.
more awareness about reproductive rights in general, about violence against women and sexual harassment in the workforce.
All lies. Men are predominantly more likely to be the victims of violent assault. So if you really cared about equality, you would be pushing governmental bodies, bureaucracies, and policies that protected men. Because women are so much less likely to be the victims of violence than a woman. But you're not about equality, are you?
And some of the most celebrated female writers that we still study today came into the spotlight.
And why do you study them? Because the powers that be want you to study them and be indoctrinated into these lies. Yeah, the upheld fist. Yeah, the Communist Party symbology is not lost on me.
And now, in 2023, we can vote. We can
Right, but you shouldn't be able to because you don't have equal responsibilities to men.
hold jobs even after we're married. We can
Yeah, and what does that mean? Less kids are being born, so the population goes into the toilet and eventually will die out. And then humanity will eventually die out if we follow your ideology, which makes your ideology nothing more than a death cult.
get divorced, run for parliament.
Right, how is that? By the way, how is that about equality? You can get divorced whenever you want. In fact, women are incentivized to get divorced. So you are against marriage. Everybody knows that about feminists. They're against marriage. They say one thing, they do another. Women get their kid 90+% of the time. They get custody 90+% of the time. Full custody. 97% of alimony goes toward women. They're incentivized to get divorced. No fault divorce. She can sleep around with tons of dudes. No consequences. What kind of contract is that where you break the contract and there's no consequences? In fact, you get rewarded. How's that equal? And the man gets shafted. Where's the 50-50 treatment you ladies say you're about? Right, because you're not about that at all. You're just about destroying the family and giving the state ever more power and control over future generations.
We can drink in bars, own houses. We've got the pill, the sex.
So see, everything she's talking about is hedonism, is pleasure. Now we can do everything we couldn't do before. And by the way, this all applies to men too. It was not looked favorably upon for men to run around and bang everything in sight. That is another piece of propaganda, a lie that was spread by feminists, that the majority of men were running around, banging everything in sight, eschewing marriage for, screwing whores and going to whorehouses. That's a lie. Yes, there were men that did that, but they were the minority, not the majority. The majority of men wanted to meet a good, wholesome Christian girl and get married and have a family.
Discrimination Act. We've had a female Prime Minister and...
Yeah, unfortunately, your sex discrimination acts discriminate against men. by favoring women over men. So I don't know how that's equality under the law.
Her misogyny speech.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man.
We play
Well, how about we lecture you about misandry and your clear and obvious hatred of men and hatred of the family? How about that? Nah.
footy and cricket and any other sport we want.
Yeah, but nobody's watching them. Those sports are directly funded by their male equivalents. And by the way, these women make more money than the men in regards to what those sports bring in total. Like that Megan Rapinoe running around talking about how she wants equal pay. Meanwhile, she's getting a bigger piece of the pie overall. It's just that, you know, women's soccer makes so much less money. But of that money, she's getting a lot more of it percentage-wise, but she's somehow oppressed. Yeah.
We've had Me Too and March for Justice.
None of them were good. You got a few high-profile cases that were held up as some kind of shining example of the virtue of women, the virtue of victims, and the evil of men. But they were really just outliers. And the vast majority of cases, Me Too cases, were spurious, total BS, and it seems like the movement did a disservice to women and did nothing more than make it more difficult to make it in the workplace that they say they want to be in so much. Because dudes don't want to work with them, dudes don't want to be around them, dudes don't want to mentor them, dudes don't want to spend any time alone with them. They're problematic to hire, and more problematic after Me Too, so they're less likely to get, jobs than before, because guys just don't want to deal with the hassle and the possible legal ramifications and repercussions of hiring a woman. Yeah, Me Too didn't do women any favors, that's for sure.
It's all progress.
That's not progress. That is not progress. You're just an idiot.
So, do we still need feminism?
No, we don't, but of course you're going to say yes, we do, even though women have more rights under the law than men. So they're afraid to lose their privileges, and a lot of women realize they have privileges under feminism, even though a lot of the time people who have privilege don't know it. But the one thing they don't want to do is lose all the nice little goodies that they get by claiming to be victims. All right, they don't want to lose all that attention, though that attention and validation they get by playing victim. That you automatically are as a woman. I don't want to lose that. Don't lose my power. I don't want to lose my privileged place. So sure, they're going to keep pushing the lie that women are somehow oppressed.
Yes, I still think that feminism is still required.
Why?
There's still an idea of women being objectified nowadays.
By who? Themselves? Just look at the Only Freaks, the OF epidemic. Women are, in ever greater numbers, objectifying themselves just for the purpose of making money off of the men they say they don't need, I might add.
So there's always that lingering fear as a woman to walk around alone.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Lingering fear, and the powers that be play upon that fear.
Definitely still need feminism.
Yeah, because I need my paycheck.
Absolutely. We don't live in an equal world. We
No, women have superiority over men, so it's definitely not equal. You're correct.
don't live in a world where women and gender diverse people are safe.
What did she say? Gender something, binary people are safe. See how she's throwing herself into the intersectional soup?
Brittany Higgins' case and Grace Tame are really important.
Compositional fallacy. Let's take a few outliers and try to conflate and represent that as the general. Logical fallacy.
For people around Australia, not just women, not just gender diverse people, around Australia, to take a look at the country and think, hold on a minute, we might not be as equal as we thought.
Right, but you got it backwards. It's the men that are oppressed and the women who are doing the oppressing.
Feminism is very much needed today. Aboriginal women experience sexism and other forms of oppression more often because of the way that race and gender intersect.
See? Yeah. This is intersectionality started happening when the powers that be saw that feminism was becoming less and less effective as a cudgel for the kind of social constructivist change that they wanted. So they started conflating gender and race and, class and identification along gender lines. Yeah, because feminism doesn't have quite the power that it Used to. Don't kid yourself, though. It's still got power.
That's a very good point. Before we go any further, I want to draw your attention to something. These movements that led us here
All non-organic, all created for the purposes of control, both on the right and the left.
have been almost exclusive to white women.
Feminism worldwide hasn't always been inclusive of First Nations women, black.
We can't have white women getting too much power and say. We got to conflate them with the black women, and then we got to eventually push the white woman out. They're too much of a segment of the population. They're too large a segment of the population. We got to put the power and control into the hands of the smallest groups possible, right?
Women or women of colour. So in Australia, it has taken many waves of feminism to start to give space to First Nations women in these discussions.
While the second
Yeah, notice First Nations. They don't give a crap about third world countries because many of those countries are monoliths, ethnically speaking, racially speaking, class-wise, wealth-wise. There's just not enough disparities among the general population to use as a divide and conquer type scenario. So, yeah, let's focus on the first world. That's where most of the money and wealth is, right? Yeah.
wave was hitting Australia in the
That's not to say that they don't still steal from third world countries and take advantage of them. Of course they do, in other capacities, but that's another video.
60s, First Nations women were only just allowed to vote. When we look at feminism today, there's a word that helps us describe this inequality between women. It's called intersectionality.
Of course. Gotta shift the goalpost, baby. Gotta shift the goalpost. Right, yeah. You really have, and it's far too obvious just how superior you are in the public sphere to men. So we gotta change the argument.
Intersectionality describes the way that multiple systems of oppression can impact one person.
And this is why you're not seeing videos on YouTube and other social media platforms addressing feminism anymore, because they have been subtly but surely trying to shift the focus away from the word feminism to intersectionality. Socioeconomic, see, wealth, class, disability, oh yeah, I forgot that one, right? Yeah, ableism. Yeah, so we've got disability, cultural Marxism, economic cultural Marxism, communism, sexual cultural Marxism. Yeah. Now we're going to shift things and conflate them all together. Now you can't attack feminism without attacking black woman and disabled woman and poor woman. Yeah.
Person as an individual. Being First Nations, you're much likely to experience that lack of power.
Really? I mean, as a man, sure. That's how it realistically plays itself up. What are you talking about? I mean, if you were really some kind of, actual feminist who cared about the plight of women being oppressed, wouldn't you be pushing your ideology, I don't know, in the Middle East? In Africa? No. There's no money to steal there. They just got dirt and, mud huts and all that. There's no money that we can shift around or redistribute there, because this is just, Marxism, socialism that we're pushing. Yeah, it's not going to work over there. And even if it did, they got nothing we want, so, yeah. It's only the first world nations that we want to do this in, even though women are treated better than men in these countries, I see, yeah.
In a greater sense. But if you also bring gender identity, if you're a member of the LGBTIQA community, if you live with a disability, among many other things like socioeconomic status, that is intersectionality.
That is getting more allies for the exact same cause and making ourselves more bulletproof. See, because how could you be against disabled people and gay people and lesbian people? Because if you're coming against me, the feminista, you're also coming against them. Yeah, of course, it's very smart move to ally yourself with all these other groups.
layer all of those experiences for an individual. So we just need to look at domestic violence, for example.
Geez, here we go. This is total BS. Women are responsible for 70% of all domestic violence. 70%. The only differential is the reporting and the amount of damage done. Women report these crimes more because men are ashamed of reporting violence against them by a woman, because in most cases they know the authorities aren't going to do anything, and even if the authorities do something, they don't want to be seen as the weak, cringy guy that got beat up by a woman. And oftentimes, well, women can't. They can't with their own hands and fists do as much damage. And by the way, in many cases they resort to using weapons, but it's a reporting issue. Women do initiate violence more. They do use violence more against their partners. And all you got to do is look at lesbian relationships, which have the highest number of domestic violence reporting out of all forms of domestic violence. So women are actually more violent than men. Part of it probably has something to do with the fact that they know they can get away with it. Yet another wonderful inequality that comes from your wonderful feminism that is supposed to be about equality and equal treatment of the sexes.
To show that Aboriginal women are disproportionately impacted and affected by domestic violence in Australia.
And men are even more so than you and whitey women, so shut up.
There's clearly still a lot of work to do.
Oh, of course, because there's got to be a lot of work to do, because under just the guise of feminism and gender equality, all the work was already done, and that was becoming ever more obvious. So now we're going to associate ourselves with and conflate ourselves with the trans and the gay and the ableist and the gender-identifying people, the non-binary, pansexual, polyamorous, queer mix of people. And in that sense, now that we've allied with them and made their cause our cause and conflated the two and muddied the waters, now we got a whole new, huge, voluminous set of issues and causes that have to be fought for under the guise of intersectionality, because under the guise of feminism, well, quite frankly, it's too obvious that women are, superior in Western culture when you just focus on that ideology. So that had to go and be replaced by intersectionality.
For everyone.
We should all be feminists. We should be anti-racist feminists that are inclusive.
What the hell's one got to do with the other? No, we should all be anti-feminist, because you're not about equality.
And aware of inequalities. Men can be feminists too.
No, why can't women be masculinists? What about men? What about men's rights? Are you saying that men are somehow equal? Yes. And then she's still pushing the fantasy, the fairy tale, the presuppositional argument, so why even bring it up? That men are somehow treated better, they're superior, and we're still in a patriarchy, even though in the West we're obviously in a matriarchy. And that's the problem.
People out for sexist behavior is hard, but
women commit way more sexist behavior than men. Just look at who it's okay to criticize. It ain't women.
We can all do it.
I think all young people need to understand feminism under the modern lens.
But you don't want them to, because if they really understood it, they'd know it's all BS. That's why you've now relabeled it and conflated it with intersectionality and all these other movements.
Push away some of those messages that have been sent about the negative implications of feminism.
Yeah, of course, because that's how you make your living, right? You make your living off of the lie of feminism.
And really start to understand that it is just a space to create equality for all.
No, it's not. It's a space to give women privilege. I look at the outcomes. I don't look at your propaganda BS. Anyhow, that's it for this, one of the very last specific videos pushing the feminist ideology. It's really about transitioning. And I saw a lot of these videos when I searched for feminism. It's all a very systematic, purposeful shifting from feminism to intersectionality, because the powers that be and the people that identify themselves as feminists that make a living calling themselves feminists are seeing ever more pushback and ever fewer returns by identifying and pushing the singular ideology of feminism. So every push I've seen in the most recent videos that are old, 9 months to a year old, are shifting to intersectionality, allyship with all of these other cultural Marxist movements, which indeed are the same, are the exact same ideology, just with a differing focus insofar as what's being used as the supposed end goal. But the way to get there, the cultural Marxism, is exactly the same. Anyway, let me know what you think. Does the fact that so few women these days now identify as feminists mean that feminism has gone the way of the dodo? Or does it really just mean that they've shifted their identifiers, supposedly shifted their focus to race and to identification and to sexual orientation, to try and kind of mask the fact that they're still feminists, still pushing the same ideology. They're just trying to shift the focus so you will not hone in on their ideology of feminism, because it's been so debunked, it's had so much pushback, it's been proven time and time again to be nothing more than a female superiority movement. So now they're trying to muddy the waters and conflate it with all these other movements to protect and shield themselves from the consequences of feminism being proven to be a female superiority movement. So let me know what you think in the comment section, and please like and subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Well, just hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, leave a comment, give me a thumbs up, helps with the algorithm. I'm also on BitChute as the Realist Philosopher and Rumble as well. And on that note, I'm out of here. I am the Realist Philosopher, also known as the Bachelor Philosopher, and I wish you all a good and pleasant day. Take care.